Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Youth Have a Voice podcast. Today I am joined with Asha Segun Olasanmi, who is a current university student at at Swansea University studying civil engineering. Asha is one of the 100 Rise Global winners, and she won out of over 80,000 applicants back in 2022. Since she won, Asha has enjoyed being part of a diverse community and getting to pursue her academic and non-academic dreams. Asha cares deeply about the marginalized and is constantly thinking of opportunities to contribute to the quality of life of the people around her. So, Asha, how are you today?
I am very well, thank you for asking.
Okay, I found you through I was so back in like I don't remember when I connected with you, but I know I've connected with a bunch of Rise winners and finalists like back then, and then you were one of the people that popped up, in LinkedIn, the recommended session. That was where I found you, and then when I went through your profile, I was really inspired by some of the things you had been doing. And then that was why I decided to reach out to you and ask you to join the show. And I also find it really cool that you are a STEM student in the United Kingdom and you're one of the Rise winners because I know Rise is a really big company and it's one of like the biggest companies when it comes to competitions and scholarships. So you being able to win that is a really huge milestone, which I would like to commend you on. So I just want to know, what was it like joining Rise? Why did you decide to apply? What was your motivation? And how did it feel to finally win the Rise competition?
Right. So thank you for the commendation, first of all. Yeah, it's still a dream. It's like a dream whenever I stop and think about it. The project that I had worked on for my RISE application was a research paper on the
Mm-hmm.
effects of stigmatization of young mental health patients in southwestern Nigeria, where I'm from. So when I say young, I mean I'm referring to the age group 10 to 24.
Okay.
And I researched at that time using a combination of questionnaires that I designed myself. I conducted key informat interviews, and then of course, Google Scholar was very helpful in obtaining data that would be relevant to my work. And I think in terms of how I found the experience, it definitely varied, or should I say developed, as time went on. Overall, it was definitely a lot of learning. It was an amazing learning experience because I had never written a research paper before. I'd never
Mm.
conducted that sort of thing in my life. So it wasn't like I was doing something I was really familiar with and I felt I was an expert on. It was a first time thing and I was like, but I was excited going in. I was like, oh my goodness, I am so eager. I had an idea of what I wanted to do because youth well-being is something that I was starting to develop a real interest in at that time. And I had the vision of where I was going, what I wanted to achieve. It's just that I needed to learn a lot of things to get to where I wanted to get to. So I had to learn about ethical clearance, how to obtain that sort of permission for conducting research. I had to learn how to design questionnaires. I'd never used Google Forms before that in my life. I had to know if I'm going to be interviewing people on professional levels or a professional basis, what do I need to be aware of? How do I reach out to them? How do I mobilize resources and all of that? So I was really eager going in, and then I quickly discovered, oh, there's a lot of things I don't know. And then I think that just helped me to, instead of putting me off and saying, "Oh, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it." I think it
Mm-hmm.
really helped me adopt more of a mindset of how do I learn how to do it then? Because there were sort of sub quests that I needed to complete in order to achieve my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I just went about a lot of learning as time went on. I remember feeling really intimidated as well because we had a system at that time for uploading videos. We'd be given questions and prompts about our project and our work and how it was going. And the thing is, with the system, then you could see everyone's videos, and I would just
Mm.
see thousands. Like I keep scrolling, and there was no end. I was like, "How many videos are on here?" And it's from people all over the world doing all sorts of amazing stuff. And what I didn't realize at that time, or what I couldn't see at that time, that my work mattered, or that
Mm-hmm.
someone could consider my work amazing. I just started
Mm.
comparing, and I was like, I can't compare with these people. I cannot. I am very inferior compared to them. I definitely suffered some inferiority complex. I was like, can I
Mm,
do this? I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough with the camera. Oh, the video quality is poor. I have to record over and over again. And I think that sort of comparison was really it was really harmful, but I indulged in it a lot and I didn't think that I
mm,
could make it. And then in addition to that, I faced challenges as time went on. For example, I started university in Nigeria, so I got my schedule just became increasingly hectic and
mm.
struggled with finding time to complete my RISE project. Although this became less of a problem because a strike happened that year and so I had more time. But
Uh,
then also because the professionals I was working with, they just started to not really cooperate. So everything just seemed to like be caving in on me at a point, and I was like, I can't cope. I'm going to pull out. I can't finish this. But I think that that was when that I realized that this work matters not just because of RISE. I'm not doing this just because I want to submit a research paper, but I'm
mm,
doing this because I'm investigating something that really matters. I'm
mm,
looking into well-being in my country, or in a region in my country, not the whole of Nigeria. It was southwestern Nigeria, but I'm looking into this because I believe it's a real issue. I am
mhm,
passionate about it, and I want to see my work to a reasonable conclusion. So I
mhm,
think when my mindset shifted from I want to win to I want to see this work to a good end. I want to learn from it. I want to be able to help others with what I learn. Then I think it became less of a burden. And I think that's
mm.
part of what Rise wanted us to realize that it's not just about the glam if you win. It's more about
The journey.
exactly the journey instead of the results. It's more about the process and how that can be helpful to other people as well. So a
Mm.
lot of things definitely went through my mind, like with different stages. But I think when I came to that realization, things made more sense and I was able to stick more through it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. I find this quite inspiring. I remember back when I was like 16 or 17, I wanted to do Rise too, but I just didn't have the motivation to start. So seeing that someone was able to persevere and push through, because the process is definitely very rigorous. I remember downloading the app and seeing, I was like, where am I going to even start from? So
Mm.
it's quite inspiring seeing how you were able to push through and finish it, and then you became one of the 100 winners over 80,000 applicants. That's really inspiring to see. So once again, I commend you greatly for that. Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. I think you said you mentioned that you started university in Nigeria. So
Yes.
before you left Nigeria, were you also studying civil engineering? And what exactly made you move to the UK?
Yes. Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful question. I was studying civil engineering in Nigeria. It was the same
Mhm.
course. So I started uni or university, sorry, I should be more formal. But I started university in Nigeria in 2022.
Okay.
And um, how do I explain this? So it was a time where it was post-COVID, and
Mm,
so university applicants or yeah, new university students were being admitted on a batch by batch basis. So the
okay.
university I had selected, they were merging um two batches together. So it was the year before me and my
Mhm.
year to be merged into a single application cycle. So they all treated us as though we had graduated the same year and we applied at the same time. And
Mhm.
so I got in eventually, but because it was post-COVID, a lot of things were different. And so we started the academic year in January instead of
Mhm.
the usual September. And so we started in January, but then in late January, but then by March there was a strike, an academic strike. And I remember at first it being, I'll just go home for a week. Don't worry, we'll be back. But then the week turned into 2 weeks, and then a month, and then 2 months,
Six
and then
months.
exactly. Before you know it, it's an indefinite strike. And I
Mm,
remember being home and just sitting and thinking, this isn't what I signed up for. Like I literally just started my higher education journey. I'm not happy about this. And
mhm.
then I'm a Christian, so I tend to just take everything to the Lord in prayer. So I was like, dear Heavenly Father, I don't want to just sit at home for months on end while
Mhm.
my education is on hold, because I
Yeah.
recognize that although the strike was a nationwide one. It was all federal universities in Nigeria that were on strike.
Yeah.
I recognize that my peers outside the country, outside the continent, will still be progressing with their studies, and I
Mhm.
just wasn't comfortable with the idea of sitting at home and not
Okay.
learning because I love learning. And so I prayed about it. I started applying to other universities. At first I didn't tell my parents. I was just like, I'll just apply and see what they say. I'll just apply and see if I get in.
Mm-hmm.
So I started applying, and then but it was definitely during that moment or during that period that I realized I don't want to just sit at home. Because I think altogether in the end we were on strike for nearly 8 months. And I'm thankful then that during that period I had secured admissions elsewhere and I wasn't just, not doing anything. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. But during those 6 months, apart from applying, were there any development things you were doing to get better and to improve yourself? So like let's say like the first 2 months when you realized that this strike was taking longer than you thought it was going to take, how exactly were you in working on yourself during that time? What were you doing at that time that was helping you grow and develop?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing about me. I think while it's a strength, a lot of times it's also it's also a weakness. Or while it's a
Mhm.
weakness, a lot of times it's a strength. There's one thing about me which is that I can't sit still. I
Mm,
can't be idle.
idle.
So I have trouble resting. I have trouble resting, which is the downside because I'm always doing something. But I think it's
Mm,
it's definitely helpful a lot of the times to know that time is a gift, time is
yeah.
a resource that should be maximized. So I just have to learn to pace myself and take rest when I should. But generally during that period, almost immediately, I found something else to do. So I got involved with an organization called Youth Up, Youth Up Global.
Okay.
I believe they're very big on LinkedIn and they have lots of connections all over the world. So I got involved in Youth Up Global. I signed up as a volunteer then, and then they were creating at the time a subgroup called Young Females in Tech and Creatives. So it's called YFTC. And then the leader at the time, I'm good friends with her, she reached out to me and then we were forming a leadership team. So I
Mm-hmm.
got on board as the executive director then. So what we're doing is that we're empowering young females, Africans especially, in terms of creative skills, but then also tech skills. And so we had a couple of boot camps. I remember just sitting over an Excel sheet for hours and hours, in the screening process. That's just a memory. But
Mm,
generally I got involved with the workflow there. So I definitely honed my skills as a leader because I was the youngest in the team, in the leadership team, and I
okay.
had an executive like directorship position. So I definitely honed my skills then, and then putting together programs, trying to discover what it is females wanted to learn. I mean, everyone wants to
Mm,
learn something different, which was
yeah.
a bit of a challenge, but it was also an opportunity to realize, oh, there's so many gaps that we could be filling. So I worked with the young females in tech and creatives, and then I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the name. I remember uh I cannot remember. But I did do a couple of courses. I did a copywriting course run by the Sailor Academy, but then I
Okay.
also did a course on a series of tech skills. So there was video editing, and then I think there was a bit more of copywriting and like graphic designing, and it was just a series of courses. It was a boot camp that I did. It was I think a week-long boot camp, and we just always had so much homework, and that pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I remember because we had to record ourselves doing certain things. We had to post the video on Twitter and Instagram, and I remember being like, no, because I was such a shy person. And the idea of uploading a video of myself on Twitter definitely, like, it genuinely shook me to my core. I was so terrified. But it was during that period I started to step outside of my comfort zone. So I did lots of courses. And yeah, I think I just focused on becoming more well-rounded as an individual.
That's really cool to hear. I think we may kind of be similar in that aspect that we both cannot rest. We can't be idle. We cannot do anything. I'm the kind of person that I can't sit down and say I'm not doing anything. Even
Yeah.
if I decide to be idle for like a minute, I suddenly remember that, oh, there's this thing I wanted to do at a point in time.
Yeah.
And then even sometimes in my sleep, I will remember something while I'm sleeping. So, like you
Oh,
said, it may be a weakness to an extent, but at the same time, it's also a blessing. It's like a blessing and a curse at the same time. But
yeah.
yeah, so I think it's really cool actually to be able to push yourself and persevere regardless of what challenges you may be facing, and just being able to always find something to do. I think that's a
Yeah.
really cool thing. I want to know, why did you decide to study civil engineering? I know STEM is increasing over Africa and generally over the world, but even as a Nigerian, being a female in STEM, how did it feel? How does it feel? Because you're a Nigerian, even though you're a Nigerian in the diaspora, how does it feel to
Mm.
be a woman in STEM? And what exactly would you say was your motivation behind studying civil engineering?
Oh, wow, thank you. That's a really good question. My motivation. The thing is, up until I was like 12, 13, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon
Okay.
because I read the book called Gifted
Gifted
Hands by
hand, Ben Carson.
yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. That book was just I could read it over and over again. I loved it. So yeah, for a long time I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I was like, this is my field. This is what I love. I want to open up people's brains. I want to do this and this and this. But I think as the first thing that made me realize, oh, maybe this is not the path for me was um after our exams,
Hmm.
um, as we were approaching senior secondary school one, my school did something where they allowed us to explore the subjects that we would be doing beforehand. So I wasn't at that level of study yet, but did I had classes in physics and biology and
Like
chemistry.
taster classes, kind of.
Exactly. So we had taster classes, and I realized I did not like biology one bit. I was just, what is this? I was like, is this what I'm going to have to study for a lot for good God knows how many years to become a
Mm,
doctor? So that was the first time I started to reconsider my
here.
career option. I'd never really had to reconsider before, but then I started to reconsider. I realized I loved physics with all my heart. I loved
Mm,
math and further math. I enjoyed technical drawing and
hmm.
I so that was when I started to rethink. But then again, I'm a Christian and I just pray about everything.
Yeah.
I think that was when I also started to really pray about it because before then I was just like, oh, I'll become a neurosurgeon. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. But then I started to think about it and pray about it and also do some
Hmm.
research in terms of what career options are there. I started to ask my parents and my friends, what do you think my strengths are? Look at me. What do you see when you see me? Do you see me in a white lab coat? Or do you see me in overalls? Do you see me, where do you think my skills and my talents would be most helpful? And I started to ask myself those important questions as well.
Questions.
And then I think like as the Lord led me, I just realized I love designing as
Hmm.
well. You could give me bolts and parts and all sorts of things and give me a manual. And I would love to sit down with it for hours and hours to put it together. I
Hmm.
love planning, not just events or programs, but also just processes. So I'm really intrigued by the construction process and what goes into
Mm,
every stage. I'm really intrigued with design options and how we arrive at a certain design option or what makes one more preferable to the other. And so I think as I learned those things about myself, I realized, ooh, I think engineering is more my thing. And
mm,
then civil engineering is just so vast and so helpful. It comes into play in every area of our lives. You can't go anywhere without a road, for example, or a bridge or a dam.
hmm.
Where do you live in? You live in a building, you go to a school, you work in the office. All those are places and structures put in place by civil engineers. So I
Hmm.
just realized how indispensable it is and how people oriented it is.
Hmm.
And so I think, yeah, that was what made me settle on civil engineering. I don't
Engineering.
consider it settling, though I enjoy it. Um, in terms of how I feel as a STEM woman or as a woman in STEM, I honestly, I don't know. I think I'm just not. Lots more people are hyped about it than I am. I would definitely say that.
Mm,
So I don't really think of myself as a woman in STEM. I don't know why. I'm just like I'm studying engineering. It stops there
mm,
in my mind. But I do have friends and people on my course who are like woman in STEM, like they're just very excited about the title. But I'm just like, yeah, I need to solve an engineering question. So that's how I think about it, to be honest. Although when it comes to like male female ratios and things like that, like in my class, I'd say it's about one girl to four guys.
uh,
Um, Mainly because we're not exactly a big group. I think if we're a bigger group, it might be a bit lower than that. But then I am impressed, honestly, with how far it's come. I'm aware it was like maybe 1 to 8, 1 to 10, maybe even 1 to
mm,
20 in the past. So I know it's definitely come a long way, and I'm happy to see that more females are coming in and more women are realizing this is for me as well. I'm very capable of this.
Mhm.
So yeah, when I look around in my class, then I'm like, oh, okay, there's not a lot of girls here. But otherwise, I don't really, I'm just like, I'm studying engineering. That's, yeah.
That's really cool. But was it like that in Nigeria, or was the gap, so was the gap as much in Nigeria as it is in the UK? So while studying civil engineering, even for like the few months where you started in Nigeria.
Yeah, it's definitely more. Definitely more. It's a huge gap in Nigeria. When in the UK, there's only about 70-ish of us in my class.
Mm-hmm.
But in Nigeria, we're over 100, like tons of
Mm-hmm.
us, nearly 200, I think, if I recall correctly. Hopefully, I'm not making numbers up. Um, and the gap was, I would dare to say it could have been one girl to maybe nearly 20 boys, possibly even more.
Oh
There were just
wow.
so many guys everywhere I looked, and I was, why are there so many? But I think I was just really happy to be there. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really worry about it as much. I mean, I'm a bit smallish in stature.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard truth I had to accept. But I'm a bit smallish. So I could get easily intimidated sometimes, a
Mm-hmm.
few times. I just turn around and there's this massive guy in front of me, and I'm like, but outside that, I wasn't really worried about the ratios, but I think that yeah, it's the gap is concerning back home. It's definitely more
Mm-hmm.
concerning in Nigeria.
But
Yeah.
would you say that when some women in Nigeria may want to go into STEM career pathways, but they may be scared of starting it because it's just not as accepted in Nigeria as it is outside of Nigeria?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think gradually the conversation is shifting in that regard, and more girls are starting to realize that, oh, this is an option that's available for me as well. Like I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
just do the classics. I can be an engineer. I can be a
Mm-hmm.
civil engineer. Um, I think it's definitely shifting, but there's absolutely more that can be done in that regard. I think more girls need to be able to realize, or they should be allowed to realize that they can do that. Like if you're buying toys for girls,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to stop at the dolls. You can buy Lego
Yeah.
sets for them and help them realize that they're capable of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I have an important question. I think this is where the conversation may be shifting to. What were your biggest culture shocks moving from Nigeria to the UK? What exactly would you say was different? What was concerning to learn? What was interesting to see the differences? Because I know the cultures are completely different to a great extent. So what were your biggest culture shocks moving?
Oh, yes. Culture shocks. I had good ones. Oh, well, I suppose. Yeah, I could call them good. I had not so nice ones. I think a first major culture shock for me was having desserts after meals. Because yeah, we just like, we just in Nigeria, we just eat the food and drink water, maybe a glass of juice, and that's, period. That's the end. Like
Hmm.
then it's time for a nap or something. But coming here and like in my church, we get asked to people's homes a lot. So we have lots of
Okay.
meals with other people in their homes. And so like I'd have seconds on the food because I'm like, oh, this is all the food. And then
Mm.
I'm full to the brim. And then someone just asked, desserts, everyone? And I'm like, desserts? What do you mean desserts? Like I'm full. I have no room for dessert.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was one thing. The fact that you'd have like sometimes you have a snack, you could have a coffee. I
Hmm.
still haven't tasted coffee, but you have a coffee, you could have a main meal and then a dessert. That was one thing. The weather was another shock. It was a big shock. I arrived in the UK for the first time during winter.
Hmm.
And so I had to learn that, especially here in Swansea, the weather is very unpredictable. So just because it's shining one time, the sun is shining one time doesn't mean it won't be raining the next. So I
Mm.
learned to always take a coat with me. And then I learned how to spot a good coat. You see the coats
Mm.
and then you see the nice solid coats. So I had to learn how to spot the solid coats. And then it's hailing 1 minute, raining the other, the sun is shining the other. Just literally the other day, I was out doing field work,
Mhm.
a practical for one of my surveying courses. And within the span of 3 hours, it rained, it hailed, and the sun, and it was just ridiculously cold. So I think that shock is something, that sort of experience isn't something I got in Nigeria. So it was definitely
Mm.
another culture shock. Another one was the bus timetables. I remember buses back home aren't timetabled. You just get
Yeah.
there and ask the bus to where you're going. So I
Hmm.
had to learn coming how to read bus timetables, which buses went along which routes, how to plan a journey, especially if you needed to take multiple buses to get to one location. So a bus doesn't stop just because you say, "Oh wow," or here, I'm stopping here. You have to press a button, that sort of thing. So I think that integration of how like what the system is, yeah, in a different location definitely took time. But I think I'm still learning, to be honest. I haven't
Mm.
completely mastered it, but
Mastered it, yeah.
yeah. And in terms of academic, shall I still call them shocks? First of all, the fact that we had practicals earlier on, because when I was studying civil engineering in Nigeria, my understanding was it was a five. My
Mm.
understanding was that we wouldn't have practicals until our third year.
Okay.
But just being in the UK for such a short time, I've had so many practicals. And then for each one, you have to write a lab report.
Hmm.
And so the format for a lab report is like a proper paper, like an introduction and a methodology, and the
Mm.
research and results and analysis and references. I did not know how to reference properly before coming to Nigeria. Yeah. I did a bit because I had to do my research paper for RISE, but
Mm.
I didn't know that there were so many different styles and so many different
Styles.
methods. And I think more rounded assessment methods as well in terms of giving presentations. I'd never done that in my entire education journey in Nigeria. So
Mm.
coming and having to give presentations, having to do lots more group work and all of that. There were definitely like things that shocked me a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Turnitin is actually one of my biggest enemies regarding what you said about
Ooh.
referencing. As a law student, I literally hate turning in because I think my school uses the Harvard format, and for law
Oh,
it's slightly different. So
yeah.
I always have to make sure that I'm not plagiarizing anything. Even sometimes I don't know why it sometimes plagiarizes my reference, and then I now realize, okay, then that doesn't that doesn't count as
Oh,
plagiarizing as far as I'm concerned. But
yeah.
it can be really frustrating sometimes. So I can personally relate to
I've
that
heard that.
on a really personal level. I wanted to know, so as you have moved to the UK, right, and you have
Mhm.
seen the differences in education between Nigeria and the
Yeah.
UK. I believe you did your high school in Nigeria, your secondary school in Nigeria.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so having experienced two educational curriculums, what would you say that maybe some Nigerian universities or some Nigerian schools need to do to better improve the academic experience? Based on your experience from two educational systems, from the Nigerian curriculum to the British curriculum, what would you say that Nigerian schools need to do in order to be able to change the academic experience that Nigerian students have, because you've experienced both now. So what do you think needs to change? What differences do you think need to be implemented to make the academic experience in Nigeria to become a better one?
Yeah, that is a great question, actually. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
I would say, first of all, more rounded assessment methods,
Mhm.
because in Nigeria, oh my goodness, I only did one round. Oh, I only did tests and exams in
Mm.
Nigeria, but coming here and having to do papers, for example, or
Mhm.
reports, whether individually or as a group, coming here and having to do presentations was definitely something that stumped me. I mean, I actually enjoy all the assessment methods,
Mhm.
but it was definitely something that made me open my mouth in wonder, like, oh, this is possible,
Mhm.
like this happens. So I think those areas develop excuse me, those areas develop different parts of
Mhm.
students' personalities and students' experiences. So I think it
Mhm.
would be helpful to incorporate more assessment methods. For
Mhm.
example, giving a presentation as an individual.
Yeah.
Um, definitely helps with developing the student's confidence, for example, or ability to
Mhm.
speak in front of a crowd, eloquence, that sort of planning, how to build engagement when relating
Mm.
with a group of people. So I think those are skills that we will need in the real world, but we're not
Yeah.
prepared well enough for in university or in school. So I think if these assessment methods were more rounded and we had more opportunities for developing not just our ability to remember formula, to write stuff down or to use a calculator. If these assessment methods develop more than just our abilities to, put in numbers or write down stuff, then it would be definitely helpful and in preparing us for the real world. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would say practicals earlier on,
Mm.
allowing students to do stuff with their hands and not
Mm.
just, remembering facts from
Theoretical.
their brain. Exactly. I think more practicals, in addition to all the theory that is being done. And I can't really speak a lot for secondary school or primary school because I was born and bred in Nigeria. That's where I grew up up until I
Mm-hmm.
came here for uni. Um, but from my relating with people in those age groups or those levels of education, like especially at my church, I
Mm-hmm.
think also that it's quite similar to what I've said before in terms of more hands-on activities, but
Mm.
also more excursions and trips,
Mm.
allowing students to see the real world. And I think that happens like well enough in a number of schools, but I think there's also still a lot of schools where it doesn't happen as much, especially in public schools. So
Yeah.
private schools is where they take their students out, take them to places inside the country, outside of Nigeria. But I think especially in more public schools or government funded schools, if
Mm.
everyone had that equal opportunity and
Opportunity.
access to seeing the world outside the four walls of their classroom, then they would definitely be the better for it. So I think those are a few things that could be implemented, or that if were implemented would be helpful.
Yeah, okay. So personally, I went to a private British Nigerian school in Nigeria, and although I wouldn't say the school was perfect, but I definitely learned a lot of things that have kind of impacted my life now whilst being
Mm,
in the school. A shout out to there used to be this principal in my school. Was he a principal? I know he was like a head. His name was Mr. Oluwafeolami.
mm,
He was a really good man actually. So as early as year seven, that's like JS1, as early as year seven, we were introduced to the importance of clubs and
mm,
extracurriculars and being able to think for yourselves and being
yeah,
able to put yourself out there.
yeah,
He was very huge and very big on impacting students in that light. So I remember so school used to end about like 3 p.m., 3 or 5 p.m. thereabouts. And then you had
mm,
clubs for like
yeah,
for like an hour. So you were expected to be in clubs from like 3 to 4 p.m. And God
mm.
help you that you're not in your club at 4 p.m. There used to be not principals, there used to be prefects that would go around to check
Yeah.
who is not going to their club. And then there used to be this private room that they'll just, so if it's like 3:10 and you're not at your club, they'll just pick you. They could call you from
Yeah.
like, they could call you from like, if you're at the hallway, they could call you from like as far away. They'll be like, Feolami, they'll not tell you to like go to a lab and you have to wait there and you need to explain
Oh.
why you didn't go at that point in time. But I mean, all those things, how strict it was at that point in time was really
Yeah.
helpful, I think, in being able to kind of like develop myself and think for myself.
Mm,
So I think another thing is being able to personally motivate yourself because I know some of my classmates at the time who also had these experiences, but they would probably not say that they were able to learn stuff from it. This man
mm.
I'm referring to again, Mr. Opeson, I remember we used to have like biannual school dramas. There was a particular drama that he wrote the script himself. He
Oh,
composed the songs himself. So he was really big on empowering students to do things outside of the norms of the classroom. And then
yeah.
when I got to like senior secondary school, like when I was in like year 10, I was like an arts and business kind of student. So I had the privilege of being in like classes like sociology, economics, and
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I learned a lot about like project-based learning earlier. Like then I had a teacher, I think his name was Mr. Desmond.
Mm,
He used to be really big on making sure that students do projects. So
mm.
we're doing like university level projects. You have presentations, and
Wow.
he would grade you the way a university lecturer would grade you on the project because he found it really important that you are able to push yourself to be able to learn some of these things. So
Mhm.
sometimes in the middle of a presentation, he would just talk about something, say, "Oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do that," and then you have to like go back and see what was different. And then they also taught about like self-assessment, being able to
Mm.
learn if
Yeah.
if you were developing yourself. So you can tell from the way you're presenting or from the way you're learning if you're on the right pathway. Even so, you would self-assess your peers also. So peer
Mm,
assessments. So if so you'll be able to grade your classmates and you'll be able to tell the reasons why certain things were the way they were. So if you give like your
mm,
classmate like a 3 out of 5, you need to be able to justify why your classmate got a 3 out of 5. So I think things like that. So I would thank my secondary school for instances like that. But I think this is something that students in every part of Nigeria need to be exposed to because I
yeah,
wouldn't say it's very common in the average Nigerian school to be
yeah.
able to have that kind of experience or those kind of opportunities. I don't know what your secondary school was like, if you'd like to share.
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name, but yeah, the secondary school I went to, yeah, it's definitely very different from yours. Um, it was more of study, like learn the formulas, write stuff down, get good
Mm,
marks, it was more of know the facts and then repeat them back to us in a test or exam.
mm,
And I remember I remember my very first math lesson when I came to the UK. My lecturer said something like, I don't care about you knowing, the formula. Like I want you
mm.
to know the reasoning
Why?
behind the formula.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at him like, what on earth is he saying? And then like here we're giving formula sheets and all that. And I remember just being shocked, like, if we know this, then we can solve the whole question. But
Mm,
because here they're more concerned with the learning process, I think my secondary school was quite different to that. I had one lecturer who would make us do like essays. He was my physics lecturer, and he'd be like, uh, write, research and write on the seven wonders of the world, that sort of thing. And even then, that was the max, that was the height of it. And a lot of us didn't understand why he was doing that because
mm,
no other lecturer was doing that. So it was just he at the time, even that little attempt towards pushing us to be better, or pushing us to know more than was re exactly required for exams was
mm,
seen as burdensome because it just wasn't the norm. And so it was like he was going out of his way. And the
mm.
rest of us didn't really appreciate that, the rest of us students. So it was just more of come to school, learn, don't get in any trouble,
Fam.
and then write a test, write an exam, pass. That sort of thing. I think that was more the system.
Mm,
There were a few clubs, but a lot of them just didn't function. I'm so sorry to put it that way. But they could at the start of the term you'd be told, oh, there's a certain club or there's a certain, group of people doing this thing, and you could join if you wanted, but you wouldn't really see the impact of that. I think the only
mm,
group or the only club that I know actually functioned was I do not know what they were called, but essentially they would sort of compile news, bits of news, or there'd be a nice story with a good moral lesson. And then on the
mm,
morning assembly, someone would present to us and be like, oh, this is what you need to know, like be good, or this is what's happening in the country, that sort of thing. And even then it was
mm,
like, woo, woo, applause. And I mean, it was definitely amazing, but I think more could have been done. But
mm.
yeah, I'm so grateful for my secondary school. Yeah.
Yeah, I did IGCSE, so I was exposed to, so those are like British exams for international students who are following the British curriculum. So I think in the UK it's GCSEs, but
Yeah.
in like other schools outside of the UK it's IGCSEs. So
Ah,
what you were talking about, how you need to know the process behind the learning and not just the formula
yeah.
itself, I really resonated with that because in a lot of my subjects, I remember I used to have like 8 pages long essays that I'll have to do because it's one thing to know the concepts, it's one thing to be able to apply the concepts to what
Yeah.
exactly you're doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's something that I definitely think that a lot of Nigerian schools need to teach students
Mm,
because inferring is a skill that is important and critical thinking. And I think these two things are imbibed in the system outside of Nigerian curriculum because Nigerian schools are committed to learning how to cram. So cram this and then you get
mm,
this. So
yeah.
once you know 2 plus 2 is 4, you just know 2 plus 2 is 4. You're not thinking beyond why 2 plus 2 is 4 or what could have
Yeah.
resulted to 2 plus 2 being 4. And
Yeah.
so I did IGCSE, I did WAEC. That's
Mm,
you know WAEC, the Nigerian West African exam to leave secondary school for Nigerian school.
yeah.
So I did both. So there was definitely a huge difference between both of them because for WAEC, I remember I had a teacher when I was doing WIEC. I think I did computer studies while I did WIEC. And I remember we used to look at some of the past you know, in Nigeria, there are a lot of past question booklets that you get while you're practicing for exams. So
Yeah.
yeah, so when I remember when I was looking at the past questions, I remember I told a teacher of mine that, wait, but the answer here is wrong. And I remember she was just like, well, there's nothing we can do about it because she said that I remember she told us that if the answer is wrong, I think you should leave the wrong answer the way it is because if you
Mm,
put the right answer, because the WIA curriculum has been so put in a way that even if you're right, you're wrong. So put the
yeah.
wrong answer just so that you get the marks. So that is like a huge difference between the two curriculums because one
Yeah.
is you need to understand why you're learning. Another one is whether you're right or wrong, just put the answer that we expect you to put and don't question it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
definitely think that this mindset has kind of shaped Nigerian youth to an extent because not
Yeah.
even Nigerian youth, Nigerians in general, because a lot of people don't ask questions. A lot of people just take things as they are and they never make a conscious effort into changing or developing who they are.
Yeah.
So if they tell you stand up, you're not asking why. You're just gonna stand up because they told
Yeah.
you to stand up. So it doesn't help people think critically, which is something I definitely think the Nigerian government or the Nigerian education system needs to change completely because there's no reason why you should be so put in your head, you should just be thinking, oh, if they tell me
Yeah.
to do this, I can't question, I can't think about it. So
Yeah.
I definitely think it's something that needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just add on to that a little bit as well, like I'm really loving the conversation. It's just this rigidity in our
Mm,
mindset. And I think that is something that needs to change. And it comes into play when we're not talking about solving societal issues or
mm,
being change makers. So I know I have a very lovely friend. She's quite older than I am. So she's like a big woman with her own children and her own life and everything.
mhm,
But she can't stand inefficiency. So she gets posted often to new work assignments. And then she's like, oh, this system that has been used up until now has been so inefficient. We have to change things. But then she's met so often with so much opposition and the people that she's now working with because they're like, well, this is how we've been doing stuff all the time. And she's
mm,
like, oh, yeah, but it hasn't been working. So let's switch to a system that actually works.
works.
And it's so interesting to me because I'm like, wouldn't you be happier if, you're progressing and your work is better all the time and,
Mhm.
just upgrading really, but a lot of people don't want to upgrade because they're so used to where they're at and they
Yeah.
don't want to make any changes. So I think that's just really worrisome. And I hope that I do think that should I say Gen Z? I find that to be a very rebellious label. But because when people say it's Gen Z, they immediately think of like sagging trousers and like, all
Yeah,
of that.
dreads.
I am Gen Z. I suppose I should be proudly Gen Z. But I do think that the younger generation is sort of waking up in that regard because we're more
Definitely.
exposed to the outside world and we're saying, well, I mean, there's better ways to do things. There's other alternatives,
Hmm.
which is lovely. But I think that because in a lot of existing positions and existing establishments, we find more older people there. So I do wish they were more sort of accepting and welcoming of new methods,
Hmm.
of new ways, of new, ways of thinking, of new models. I think that would definitely make our road to positive change easier
Yeah.
and faster, really, because we don't have as much opposition and we don't face as much challenges.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another thing I've also realized is that in terms of Nigerian youth, when they just realize things are not working out, I think that's another big reason for the Japa syndrome, you know, everyone that
Mm,
wants to leave the country. So
yeah,
I think that so personally, I don't have a problem with leaving the country, but I would like a Nigeria where people leave the country because they want to, not because they feel like that's the only route of escape from the lives that they
absolutely,
are in. So
absolutely.
if the country has been positioned in a way where people leave, because honestly, I love traveling. So if I like traveling because of traveling's sake, not because things are not working out, I'll definitely
Yeah,
like a Nigeria where people want to travel just because they want to and they can always come back to their country knowing that
yeah,
there's a system that works in place for them, not because they don't have any other options or they feel stuck here in Nigeria.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying.
Okay. So with you being in the UK, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so you being in the UK, you're automatically a part of the diaspora here. out of Nigeria and
Hmm.
you're seen as an international student.
Yeah.
So what would you say the education, no, not the education, what would you say the career systems are like for students out of Nigeria? So for example, I'm guessing you're on a visa to study in the UK. So
Yeah.
what would you say some of the biggest challenges you faced in terms of finding jobs or finding internships? What are things you think that people may want to know and want to learn from the differences in someone who is in Nigeria who may be looking for a job and then someone who is a Nigerian in the UK or in the US who is looking for a job or looking to find internships and stuff? What would you say people need to know before they try to make these changes?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I would say if I were to give advice, the number one piece of advice I would give to any international student from wherever, studying in wherever, is to start preparing early. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't stress that enough because I think too often people wait until um application season is about to end and then they're like, oh, I haven't applied. And often that's because they felt like they were not ready. And so they wait until application season to actually start getting ready. Whereas the actual race starts from way before then. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to account for a lot of things. I didn't realize until I came how important it was, until I started applying actually, how important it was to have a driving license. Maybe it's just my line of work and what I was hoping to intern in, which is civil engineering. But so many companies ask, do you have a valid UK driving license? And my answer
Mm-hmm.
was no, because
No.
I just didn't think it was a big deal. Like the buses work well enough, I could always go to wherever I need to go in time. But a lot of construction sites apparently are in areas that public transport does not easily access. And so they want to know if you can drive. They want to know if you have a car. Okay, if you don't have a car but you can't drive, maybe we can give you a company car, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I just wasn't aware of that because I didn't have a driving license even from back home. Yeah, I was just living my life essentially. So if I had known that, then I would have prepared much earlier to know that okay, I'm going to apply by October. So if I'm going to do that, then I need to get my driving license before then. If that's going to be the case, I need to pass my test. How many hours of lessons do I need to have had before I book a test? Do I need to pass my theory before that? How do I go about, learning the highway code and all sorts of things in order to do my theory test? So start preparing early, but then also build your CV. Because here there's so many opportunities for stuff like volunteering. Whereas back in Nigeria, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of that, to be honest. So coming here, I love volunteering. So I quickly found out that I signed up for more than I could handle. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, build your CV with whatever opportunities are available. If you can
Yeah.
volunteer. It doesn't have to be directly linked to your field of study or desired line of work before you do it. Just building experience and enjoying learning in different sectors of life really is just such a blessing in itself. But then it contributes and adds to your CV, gives you that boost when you say I volunteer and when you say this is what I do, this is why I enjoy it. And even though it's not linked to my course, this is what I learned from volunteering. And then some universities will have like employer talks or employer events. So I'd say go to those as well. It's just really different, honestly, from Nigeria when I think and compare. But the fact that we have like employer talks or events, even at my university, they'll tell us, oh, this company is coming and there'll be free pizza, you just need to show up and pay
Mm.
attention. And I'm just like, wow, okay, of course I'll come. Not just for the pizza. I mean, the pizza is a big part, but for the pizza, but also because, it's a chance to network. It's a
Mm.
chance to just learn how these different companies operate. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, just go for every opportunity that presents itself really. And in fact, even if an opportunity has not presented itself, you can chase it up.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because here there's all these organized stuff and organized opportunities. Whereas
Mm.
I think if I were talking to my colleague back home in Nigeria, then I wouldn't a lot of these things just wouldn't really apply, or it
Yeah.
might be harder to access a lot of them. So I think that for people who are in environments or in settings where your university doesn't really have employer talks or there's no volunteering opportunities at your university, then as sad as it is, it means that the onus is on you
On
then
you.
to seek out those opportunities and to seek out those platforms to actually, build a great CV, to actually
Mm.
great to actually glean excellent work experience and have that track record before you graduate or before you leave uni. So it's harder, but it's still a possibility, absolutely. So yeah, I think I just encourage people to prepare early. I don't think, oh, I can't, oh, I still have a lot of time left. I don't have to worry about internships or jobs yet. Like I think the journey genuinely starts from day one of your first year, because that's when you get to say, oh, I'm starting university and I'm preparing for the life after.
Okay, I completely agree with everything you've said so far. I particularly agree with being able to enter opportunities that may not necessarily align with your line of work or where you
Mm.
think you may find yourself because things change anyway. The world is
Yeah.
constantly changing. So I think that being able to find yourself in different pathways so that you're never stuck in one option is like really important for students to do. There's
Yeah.
something I like to advise people to do when it comes to having looking for jobs or finding careers. So try to get yourself in as many opportunities as possible. Through social media, it's very easy to find opportunities this day, from
Yeah.
LinkedIn to Indeed to Glassdoor, or even through like post on TikTok or Instagram. There are opportunities
Yeah.
everywhere. So I would advise people to have, so when you do apply for some of these opportunities and then you get them, so in order to streamline the opportunities, I'd advise people to have a master CV. So the master CV has like everything you have ever done in your life when it comes to
Hmm.
work or volunteering or even just helping out in your local community. So have a master CV for everything. So let's say you have been able to venture into, let's say, 5 different industries. And let's say you're studying maybe microbiology, but then you have
Mm.
some experience in writing, you have some experience in social media, have everything in a
Yeah.
master CV. So when the time comes for you to now like apply for a job, you now have a mini CV from your master CV. So you have to
Mm.
now create a new CV that will tailor to the line of work that you are looking at joining so that
Yeah.
so because you have so many experiences and opportunities to choose from, you're never stuck in terms of, oh, where do I go to? I don't have this, I don't have that. And there are also a bunch of transferable skills you may be able to get from being able to pick and nitpick from all the other little things you've been able to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. That sounds like excellent advice, to be honest.
Yeah. So I think the final thing I want us to speak about is how international students can have support groups. Would you say you have a support group right now in the UK, or is it lonely? Do you have people to rely on? I know you said that you're in a church group. I'm
Yeah.
also a Christian. My dad is a pastor, so I'm a huge Christian too.
Awesome.
So yeah, so I know you said you're in a church group. So that
Yeah.
has that been able to help and shape your journey while in university? Do you think that you would have been able to have gotten this far if you didn't have that support system that you currently have?
Yeah. My answer would be no. I don't think I would have coped very well, to be honest.
Mhm.
My favorite thing about Swansea, outside of my course, I enjoy my course, but I get tired of even that sometimes. I'm like, leave me alone. I just need a day to sleep. But my favorite thing about Swansea is definitely my church. And one thing that bothers me a little is when people ask, is it a black church? Because then
Mm,
I'm like, does that really matter?
mm,
Like, yes, there's Nigerians at my church. There's also Zimbabweans, there's Chinese people, Korean people, Iraqis, it's and of course British people.
mm,
But honestly, I think that it's a mistake that I see a lot of international students make when
mm,
they come, is that they first immediately look at, oh, are we from the same place? Or do we have a similar upbringing? Of course,
mm,
values matter, but I think it's values that matter, not color of skin, not
mm,
ethnicity, right? And so I think when you pursue values and meaningful connections, that is better than just pursuing vibes and skin color. Because values and meaningful connections are what will give you that they're what will contribute to the version of you that you want to become in the future. So everyone has that picture of who they want to be and how they want to improve. So I think that when you pursue values and when you pursue that actual deep connection as opposed to what the other person looks like, then it's something that lasts more in the long run. But when you're just, focused on the short term, the immediate, intersectionalities, you could end up lonelier in the long run, to be honest. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, church is definitely my support group. There's people from all over the world at my church, which is always lovely when you sit down to have a chat. Um, but I think having a solid support group is absolutely important. Like the importance of that cannot be overemphasized. And another thing is like staying in touch with family and friends from back
Yeah.
home. So many people come and then they're like, I don't know those people anymore. They throw them away, which is sad
Mm-hmm.
because they're your family, they're your friends, they're people that have known you the longest, people that will love you the longest. So as much as, that shouldn't become a hindrance to your new schedule. Like don't lose hours and hours of sleep because you're on a phone call with someone from back home. Don't do that. So stay in touch, but like also don't throw them away. So I'm so blessed in that I have, great family
Mm-hmm.
back in Nigeria. So they're my support group as well. But it's just obviously we don't see each other often. So we can't talk often as well because our schedules are just so different. But having them there, I know that if anything were to happen, I can turn to them, and
Mm-hmm.
having church to just always be a blessing. It's definitely, yeah, it I feel supported on both ends, and that ultimately contributes to me being able to be the best version of myself at school. With my studies, I'm able to truly give of myself. I'm able to concentrate. I'm able to make whatever sacrifices are necessary because I know that I'm supported and there are people that are rooting for me and encouraging me. So I would tell people not to just stick to what they've always known. So like don't be afraid to learn about new people and their cultures and their traditions and all of that.
Mm, thank you. So through your support group, would you say that your mental health has been, I know you're a big mental health advocate, so
Yeah.
would you say that your mental health has definitely improved from being able to have a support group? Or are there still some times where you just feel down and then but you remember that, oh, I have this group to help me, I have these people that have my back regardless of what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so because I mean everyone has their struggles, everyone has their down moments, their off days, and those times where they are genuinely, struggling with anxiety or depression or loneliness,
Mm,
everyone has those times. But my support group definitely plays a big part, mainly because it's centered around my core values and beliefs, right?
mm,
So my support group isn't a group of friends that I have to act chill around. Do you get what I mean? Because I think a lot
yeah,
of people say, oh yeah, my friends are my support group, but then they can't even be honest and raw with their friends. So
yeah.
then I'm like, they can't even support the real you because you're not showing the real you to them.
Mm-hmm,
But with my support group, because it's so centered around God, it's so centered around love, it's so centered around unity and service. Whenever I do have those times where I genuinely need someone to talk to, or I need encouragement, or I need advice, I found that I can turn to people at church and
mm,
say, I have these burning questions about life, or there's something happening that I'm struggling with. I can turn to people at church, and it's just always a blessing that I know that is an option because I'm a bit independent. I usually wait to the last minute before I ask for help, like
mm.
I'm just one of those people that's like, it's fine, I can handle it, I can handle it until I realize I actually can't. So it often takes me a while to ask for the help I should ask for. But
Mm-hmm,
when I do, I'm always glad that I did. Like I never
mm-hmm.
had to regret asking for help. And I always it's just in my mind then. And I know for sure that I can turn to the Lord for help. I can
Yeah.
turn to my church for help. I can turn to my family back home for help. And I know that it's not the case for everybody like that. Um, but I count it a real privilege and a real blessing. But
Mm,
I'm always telling people, come to church, like genuinely, like I love you, come to church, that sort of thing.
mm,
But yeah, it is a blessing that I do not take for granted.
yeah, that's really cool. So back to mental health. In terms of
Yeah.
an average African child, do you think that mental health is gaining more traction in the world, in the African space? Do you think that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of educating people and parents about mental health and the problems that people face when it comes to mental health? I know as a Christian, there's usually, even because I know as a Christian, some people even have the stereotype that you can't have mental health problems as a Christian. But I know that God can definitely help you in your pathway, even if you may struggle with your mental health or you may
Mm.
have problems. But what would you say needs to be done in terms of educating more people about mental health. So first of all, do you think that there's been more awareness, or do you think there's still a lot of work to be done? Yeah.
This is very interesting, because I think we've come a long way, but the
Mm,
statistics are worse than before.
mm-hmm,
And I can't really, honestly, it's almost like a paradox because I think more conversations are opening up. I think more people, more young people, maybe because I'm on Twitter a lot, or is it X now?
mm,
And so I see more people being open with their struggles. I see more people actually talking about it and talking about their journey. And it's always lovely to watch or
mm-hmm,
to read because you read the comments and then there's at least one person that's like, this has been an encouragement to me. Thank you for sharing. And I think that's just what is lovely and beautiful and endearing about the human race is that
mm-hmm.
you think you're alone, but you're actually not.
No.
And if more people were to open up and share,
Mm-hmm,
then how much better would it be, you know? So I think that conversations are opening up, but the statistics are like just so much worse. I was reading an article on LinkedIn the other day, and the person was saying uh that hold on, I have to remember now. I think, yeah, the number of patients in a federal neuropsychiatric hospital in Lagos has
mm-hmm.
recorded a 100% increase in
Wow.
2023 alone. And that's
Wow.
the number of psychiatric patients, right? And I'm just like, hold on, what do you mean? Because that is it's such a huge number.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's worrisome and it's so concerning because you're wondering what exactly is happening to us as a people. And I know that this past year or even the past couple of years has been really difficult in terms of the economy and security, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much going on that worries people. There's so much going
Mm,
on that negatively, impacts people's mental health and people's well-being. So I think that there's definitely areas to come in. There's definitely areas to come in. It's good that we're having conversation. It's good that, we're being friendly towards one
mm,
another. But I think there's absolutely more that can be done.
yeah.
Definitely. And it reminds me of the research paper I did for RISE. And I remember one of my findings being that we tend to view mental health as an organization's duty or hospital's duty or
Mm,
the government's duty. Because I mean funding is another big issue when it comes to mental health and just the health sector in general, but especially mental health. Um so we need to see it as each person's job. And like when you see someone who is exhibiting certain symptoms or certain psychotic behaviors, not just labeling the person in the community and be like, oh, there goes the crazy one.
mm,
Of course, for your safety, that doesn't mean move in with the person and try to be best of friends. But sure, there's better ways of dealing with that situation because then
yeah.
that's where stigma comes in again. And then we hope I think just recognizing that we're all a society, we
Mm-hmm.
all have individual parts to play and we all need help, right? Nobody doesn't need help.
Yeah.
In terms of practical ways, especially being in the UK, some things I've observed that are actually quite interesting is certain measures. Like my university does free breakfasts sometimes because there's a cost of living crisis in the
Mm,
UK at the moment. So one thing they do is free breakfast for students because they found that a lot of students don't even have money for food after paying rent, for example. So there'd be free breakfast or free lunch bars, food banks on campus. Some organizations have focus groups for people dealing with grief or
mm,
bereavement. And I found that so interesting. I guess you could call that a culture shock as well, because we don't
mm,
really do that back home. Like at home, if like a relative dies, you're allowed maybe a few days off of work, and then you're expected to be back. And some
yeah.
people, there'll be that sharing of condolences and all of that, but you don't really get to talk about your grief because if you
Mm,
do that, then you're seen as being self-absorbed. You're seen as dwelling on the past. People tell you to move on. But I just imagine if there were focus groups for people in similar situations where they could meet
mm,
up with a counselor, or a psychologist once in a while, or with other people um experiencing grief. I think that would be really helpful. If there were more opportunities for people to have free food or free lunches, or if there were measures to have staff or students spend more time in nature, for example, because nature
mm,
is scientifically proven to help with your well-being. I think those are more practical measures that we can push not just on an individual level, but on an organizational or institutional level as well,
mhm.
that would could potentially have really, really positive impact.
I completely agree. I think we could also use this as an opportunity to go into your project, the Light Week Challenge. Would you
Yeah.
like to talk about it?
Yes, thank you so much. The Light Week Challenge is a project that I've been working on for under a year, but it's just absolutely it's so dear to my heart. And it started when I'm an international student. We established that already. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember being on the phone with of another international student. I wasn't really very close with her, we were just acquaintances. We met through a mutual friend. And then there was just this time really where it was during the Easter break, I think. And I just suddenly got really lonely because lots of people left residences, halls of residences for their homes because, people live nearby. And I think I was literally the only one in my flat. And I remember just sitting there in my flat of 20 people. I was the only one left. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember just sitting there and thinking, I want my family. I don't want to do this anymore. But then I thought about this other international student I had met. And I was like, hold on, if I'm feeling this way, chances are she's probably feeling the same way. And so I just picked up my phone and called her. It was so awkward because I barely knew her. But I was like, hello, you probably don't remember me, but I'm just calling to check in and make sure you're doing all right during the break.
Mm-hmm.
And then she called me a few weeks after, or no, the week after, to say, you have no idea how much your call meant to me. Thank you for reaching out, even though we barely knew each other. And that was when I started thinking, there's probably tons of us that have those down moments, but don't reach out because we're hoping someone else will reach out to us first. Because I would have felt more comfortable if someone else had called me to be like, Asha, you're so, you're such a lovely person. Just to let you know you're loved, you're cherished, just all sort of sweet words to make me smile. I would have loved that, but then that doesn't mean that, doesn't mean that someone else didn't need that.
Mm-hmm.
So we sit around waiting for someone else to notice, where we're at and to offer that helping hand, to offer a listening ear, whereas we could be that helping hand and listening ear to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the story behind the Light Week Challenge. And what it is essentially, it's that it's a 7-day well-being challenge, well-being program for fresh higher education students, especially people who are new to the system. Because I found from what I observed with my own two eyes, but also from research, that students in this new phase uniquely struggle with their welfare. The struggles are really unique to their category and their transition process. So the Light Week Challenge sort of it tackles those struggles and helps students look beyond themselves to the environment around them to help them better understand life and the environment and to better integrate into the new system. So
Mm-hmm.
the twofold problem that the LWC, I call it Light Week Challenge the LWC, the twofold problem that it addresses is first of all the unavoidable issues that come with moving to a new environment. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if it's a new time zone, managing like a different academic system, maybe financial troubles, especially that's something I found to be really common. Or if there's just a lot of instability. In the family environment back home, there are thoughts that plague the student, even though they're in a new environment. And so
Mm-hmm.
if these problems go unaddressed, then the well-being of students suffer.
Yeah.
And then that in turn affects every other area of the university life. Why? Because they can't give their all to their studies. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't even want to meet up with friends to talk of making new ones. Um, they don't want to put themselves out there. And so the consequences of this then could be like the student dropping out or being asked by the institution to withdraw. And then I already mentioned the other problem of this waiting mindset. It's a very individualistic one where the students don't ask for help and they want someone else to notice that they need help. And
Mm-hmm.
then because of that, students often like fall prey to dangerous groups who are looking out for fresh, students to sort of befriend but then actually drag into trouble. So
Mm-hmm.
what the LWC does is that it provides resources for
Mm-hmm.
sleep, for managing anxiety. It contains practical advice for settling into uni beyond the good grades. It just provides those practical resources. It also contains a coping cards collection,
Okay.
that says, yeah, this happens, but then this is how to redirect your thoughts or your habits, your patterns. And then but then the heart of the LWC, the challenge itself, is that it's spread over 7 days. There's a task for each day
Mm-hmm.
that encourages the student to look beyond themselves, encourages the student to help someone else. So it says like you're not feeling 100%. You don't feel like you have everything under control. In fact, you're worried about so many deadlines and you're worried about your work. But this is how you can still be a blessing to someone else. This is how you can be proactive in managing or navigating difficult situations. Because we're supposed to be change makers, we're supposed to be innovators, so that means we
Yeah.
have to be proactive. But
Mm,
one awful thing that I've noticed about lots of young people these days is that we are not proactive.
mm,
We're not quick to spot challenges and say, even if I'm not getting paid for this, I still want to do something about it. So
mm.
that's essentially what the Light Challenge is about.
I think you may be the longest person I've had on this podcast so far, but
Why do I talk so much?
no, I've been loving this conversation so much. I think we've been speaking for like almost an hour and 30 minutes, but this conversation has been so interesting, and I'm really happy to have you here because what time is it? It's like 4:21. We started at like 3
Yeah,
p.m. But I'm really happy
yeah.
with how this conversation has been going. I'm happy it's so long because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sustain the conversation for so long, but I'm happy we've been able to speak about so much in such a long period of time. So thank you
Thank
again.
you. You too. Thank you. I think you're absolutely amazing at like organizing and steering the conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, so back to your project, the LLCW, the LWC, Lightweight Challenge. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, how can people support this project, and what would you say that how can people support? How can people join the challenge? Are there any how do people get access to the resources that are available?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Because my project is especially in the launch stage now.
Mm,
So uh I applied for funding to scale the project and to make it a reality because all I had were like the Canva designs and all that. But now
mm.
that it's a reality, it's available to everyone anywhere in the world. So essentially there's a website. I'm not sure if you link this or if I could just say the
I
website. It's um yeah.
okay. No, you
Okay.
can say go on. Sorry.
Okay. So it's yeah, sorry. I don't know. You know when you just go off and my words left me.
I
I
understand.
apologize. Yeah. So it's www.strikeaflame.org. No space bars, no spaces in between. Strikeaflame.org. And then
Okay.
on there, you see there's a challenge I already did before called the 3 challenge. But then the Light Week challenge has its own, web page there, and then you can read about it. And
Mm,
yeah, on there is a web shop to order a light pack. So the light pack is the physical toolkit of the Light Week challenge. So that's where you have the coping cards collection. That's where you have the 7 tasks, and that's where you have the resources for navigating, settling into a new environment.
mhm,
And it's the pack itself is absolutely free of cost. Oh, no, free of charge, sorry. So the costs that like went into production and shipping and delivery and all that, um the person who orders will not be charged for that at all. The only cost that the person has to cover is the shipping cost from the UK to wherever the person is. And
mm,
I remember this being an issue because I did not want people to have to pay a dime for
mhm,
this. So I applied for funding for my project for the Light Week Challenge as a non-profit initiative. That means I don't receive any part of any sort of money
mm,
as compensation for the work that I'm doing. I just really wanted people to be able to get it for free. But the
mhm,
closest I could come to that was making the pack itself free. But then shipping costs have to be handled by whoever is ordering the pack, just because there's sort of no way around that. But I'm working with like an amazing provider to make sure that those costs are very, very minimal. So on
mm,
www.strikeaflame.org, heading into the shop web page or to the store web page, then you see the light pack that's available for order. But then we also have merchandise. So we have a
mm.
journal, we have pens, we have t-shirts. Oh, I love the t-shirts. I think I rock the t-shirts. So yeah, there's all sorts of things available there. And one of the things I love, if I do say so myself, about the light pack is that the tasks are in letter formats because I
Mhm,
just miss the days of opening up letters to read. Everything
mm.
is on the phone these
Digital.
days on an app. And I'm always like, I want write me a letter. I honestly think that whoever I marry in the future has to love writing letters. Because what do you mean you're texting me what's going to happen? Like write me a letter. But yeah, I found out that a lot of people love reading letters. And I think it just has a more homely feel to it
Mm-hmm.
as well. So each task is in a letter. And I think the tone of Light Week Challenge is definitely seeing you as a friend, seeing you as someone who's on a journey, someone with greatness inside of them, someone with just an amazing level of potential, and someone who just needs help with adjusting to what is right in front of them at the minute. So the Light Week Challenge is just a way to encourage you. It's definitely your person. Well, it's not a person, but it's definitely your resource. It's for the student, and that's just the overall tone of it. And it's just amazing. The feedback I've been getting so far is really encouraging as well. Lots of people loving it, lots of people learning from it. So yeah, yeah, it's exciting.
I think this is really cool. Like, this is really, really amazing at your age, being able to be a trailblazer in this field. I find it really inspiring, honestly. And I'd like to really commend you on your work. I'm sure you're definitely helping a lot of students, and I definitely will be putting the link for anyone who's interested in the Like Week Challenge. I'll put it in so this will be streamed on different platforms. So I'll put it in the
Okay.
YouTube and also on Spotify and Apple Music so that people have access to it. So I'd
Yeah.
like to thank you.
Lovely. Thank
That's
you.
it's
Thank you.
yeah, of course, definitely. I think it's really cool the kind of work you're doing. I'm always inspired when I meet people like you because our generation, even though I would say that we're making changes, there's still a lot of work to be done. So
Yeah.
I always love when I hear inspiring stories of people who are making big changes because I definitely think that this would help a lot of students internationally, even students who may be in Nigeria, actually. I think to an extent, it could help them
Yeah.
because I know some students may feel lonely in school because
Mm.
they feel they don't have any support groups. Their parents
Yeah.
don't understand them, their teachers don't understand them. They may feel they don't
Yeah.
have classmates or friends who may understand them. So I definitely think that this would be able to reach like millions of people, and I'm not exaggerated. It's definitely help a lot of people. So well done. Well done, Asha. This is a really big thing that you're doing.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it definitely. When you first reached out to me on LinkedIn asking me to be a guest on the podcast, at first I was like, me? Me? And then I went on to read about College Guide Africa and read about the work you're doing, and I was like, this is actually amazing. And it definitely gladdens my heart. Oh, I think I'm getting close to tears. But it definitely gladdens my heart when I see people that are actually like not just sitting there. Because one thing we do very well as a country in general is complain. Complain about the government, about the fuel prices, about the insecurity. We're just complaining about every single thing. But when I see people that actually want to make that change, and it's not just with their mouth, but they're actually doing stuff to say, I want things to be better, and here's what I'm doing to that end. It's just so refreshing. And I think it gives me hope. I sound very old saying that, but I think it definitely gives me hope that, there are people that are ready to do stuff not just for themselves, but for the sake of other people, for the sake of an audience, oh, excuse me, but for the sake of
It's
people that are
okay.
watching, for the sake of other people. And honestly, it's just such a blessing, such a privilege to be asked to do this with you. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. You're really an amazing person from the things I've seen and from the conversation we've had today. I definitely hope that we can take this to like a bigger level in terms of friendship or
Yeah.
something because
Yeah.
it's been really fun talking to you today. You're doing such an amazing work and at your age and at your level with all the things you've experienced, it's really inspiring. So thank you again for deciding to come on the show. Thank you for being interested in the work I'm doing. I really appreciate it.
Mhm. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, so I think we've come to the end of this podcast episode. We've been here for like an hour, 30 minutes, but I've enjoyed every second of our conversation today. So
Me
I'd
too.
like to thank you so much, Asher, for joining me today. I wish you all the best in everything you're doing, and I definitely will be rooting for you. Even if it's from like the other side of the world, I'll definitely be rooting for you, everything you're doing. You're doing an amazing work, and this definitely needs to be shown to other people, which was the reason for the Youth Have a Voice, for people
Mm,
to see what other people are doing and be inspired by the work people are doing, regardless of their age or
yeah.
any situations they may have found themselves. So once again, I would like to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I would be linking Asha's LinkedIn page and I'll be linking your projects for other people who may be interested in it. So if you would also, I don't know if you have a support link you may want people, if anyone may be interested in supporting you, I don't know if you have a link like a GoFundMe or something.
Yes, we have social media links because I've been introduced to the world of TikTok now. Learning about TikTok. Yes, in addition to mechanics. So yeah, we have an Instagram link, a TikTok link, and
Mm,
then yeah, also a fundraising link
mm.
because we are trying to raise funds long term. So yeah, any donations would be welcome, and I'll make sure to send all of that over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Asher, for joining the conversation. And if you made it this far, I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the Youth Have a Voice podcast. I've definitely had a lot of fun here with Asher today. It's been a really interesting conversation, which I'm extremely grateful for. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, please follow, please share with your family and friends. This is definitely something that a lot of people need to be aware of, some of the things we've spoken about today. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Asher, for joining me today.
Thank you.